Hey everyone, I'm Katie Cooper. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at West Liberty University. We're going to talk a little bit about Financial Aid 101 today. Hopefully get some of your questions answered about the FAFSA and financial aid in general. I did give them permission to share our contact information, so if you have questions once we're finished, you can feel free to reach out to us as well, and we can answer any questions that you might have. Even if your student's not coming to West Liberty, we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. So first and foremost, what is financial aid? So it's money from a source other than family to assist in the cost of attending college. So we hear about these all the time: scholarships, loans, grants, student employment. We'll dig into each one of these a little bit more. Just keep in mind that's technically what financial aid is considered. Who is eligible for financial aid? First and foremost, you must be enrolled or accepted for enrollment. So you must be applied and accepted at an institution in order to be eligible for financial aid. So if you've not applied yet as a senior, or if you've not completed your application process, you want to make sure that you complete that soon. That way we're able to offer financial aid to you when we get to that point. So a lot of schools will start looking at offering financial aid around Thanksgiving if you've done your FAFSA. So we want to make sure that you're eligible for that. So just make sure you completed the application process. You must be pursuing a degree. This sounds pretty simple, but basically what that means is you must be taking classes that go towards your degree. You can't just take any classes to take classes. So just make sure that when you're signing up for courses, and schools will help walk you through the process. We're not going to leave you out to dry. We'll probably actually have a plan that you can even follow to make sure you're pursuing the degree in a timely manner too. You must be a U.S. citizen. You must sign up for selective service. So basically what that means is, so for our senior male students, you must complete the selective service question. So there's a question on the FAFSA. So if you've not signed up already, there's a question on the FAFSA that asks, have you signed up? If you say no, it will say, do you want to sign up right now? And you can complete it with the FAFSA. So then that way it's taken care of and you're eligible. If you say no, you don't want to sign up, you will not be eligible for financial aid until you do. So please just keep that in mind. And keep in mind that there may be some institutions that have additional applications or criteria. States, for instance, West Virginia, for instance, the Promise Scholarship has an additional application. For Pennsylvania, there's an additional application. For Ohio, there's no additional application. So just keep in mind that you may have some additional institutional applications or state applications that you need to take care of as well. The next. How's it determined? So dependency is a big question that we get a lot here. Basically, according to the federal government, you are dependent on your parents until you meet one of these requirements, whether it's 24, you're a graduate student, married, or if you fall into any other of those realms that you see listed there. The FAFSA will ask you these questions and you'll kind of just work through the process. Parents, I urge you to pay attention if you're helping complete the FAFSA. Just make sure that you're answering the questions based off the student and not based off of you. But just keep in mind that you must meet one of these criteria in order to not be dependent on your parents. But other than that, you would be dependent on your parents' information, including their finances, if you do not meet one of these criteria. How do you apply for this aid that we're talking about? So the FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Notice it stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is at the .gov website, so you want to make sure that you're at the government website. There are several companies out there that want to help you complete your FAFSA, which is very nice, but then they charge you at the end. You should never pay to complete the FAFSA, ever. It actually stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So if you have questions about the FAFSA, feel free to reach out to us. There's several other companies, FAFSA, they have helpful hints and so forth, but just make sure you're at that .gov website. So this is the application for all of that federal and state grants that we've talked about, the Pell Grant, the Teach Grant, those types of things. This is also the application for the West Virginia Higher Education Grant, so if you plan on applying for that as well. And then any student loans as well as federal work study. This application must be completed. So for our seniors, this is available now. It became available October 1st. You must complete this FAFSA annually, so please just keep that in mind. You must complete it every year. So in October time of every year that you're in school, if you're going to be enrolled for that following year, just make sure that you're completing the FAFSA again. Some state agencies do have additional criteria or paperwork. We talked about this briefly already. For instance, the Promise Scholarship, and we'll talk about those deadlines in a minute. How do you sign such an application? So it is an application. You're not applying for loans. You're just filling out the information to see what you would be eligible for. So don't think that you're actually accepting any loans or anything at that point. But in order to be eligible for anything, you do have to sign the application and say everything that you provided is accurate and correct. So that's the FSA ID. If you've not already registered for an FSA ID, that's just Federal Student Aid ID, then you'll want to do so. And keep in mind that one parent also must have an FSA ID. If you have an older sibling and your parent already has one, they can use the same FSA ID for you as well as your sibling, or vice versa. So you do that at fsaid.ed.gov. You can do that now, even if you're not ready to complete the FAFSA yet. You can complete this fsaid.ed.gov now. This is how you sign the FAFSA, like we talked about. But you want to make sure that you complete this application and keep it. It's very important that you have access to this username and password for multiple reasons. The biggest being, if you do plan on taking any student loans, you will need this username and password to complete the promissory notes, the entrance counselings, any type of additional information that may be needed. This is also where you can log back in and see all of the financial aid you've taken while you're in school. So it's very important that you keep this ID available. Just don't fill it out and then move on. You want this, keep it safe, write it down somewhere. Students, you can keep it in your phones. You guys keep everything in your phones, so you could keep it in the notes section somewhere secure, because it is connected to your social security number. So you want to make sure that it is secure. The next, I think I cautioned you on this a little bit already, but the FAFSA is free application. So just make sure that you are completing it for free. Do not ever pay to complete the FAFSA. There may be FAFSA workshops in your area. Right now is kind of a hard time. We've done a couple virtually, so if you have questions, we're always willing to help over the phone as well. And then actually the state of West Virginia will also log in with you and help. So they have some great contact information out right now that they can help you with that as well. The IRS data retrieval tool. So this is a game changer for you. This is going to make your FAFSA completion so easy. When you log into the FAFSA, you're going to have to provide your 2019 taxes. It used to be the prior year. Now it is the prior year. So you do have to complete it with your 2019 taxes. It is voluntary. You don't have to use the IRS data retrieval tool, but this does reduce documentation that you may need to provide to our offices or to anyone else. So you just log in. It looks like this. When you're completing the FAFSA, it'll say, have you completed your FIT taxes? You state your status, what you completed your filing status under, and then you'll see right there in the middle of the page that it'll say link to IRS. When you click on that, you'll link straight to the IRS. You confirm your address, and it'll pull all of your tax information right into the FAFSA. So you don't have to pull out your taxes and figure it all out. As long as you can verify and confirm your address, it'll pull all of your information in, which is very simple. And like I said, it reduces the amount of documentation that you might need to provide to us later on. So just some quick tips too. You will receive what's called a student aid report. You can see that what it'll look like here. You may most likely will receive it electronically. Some still receive it by mail. But this basically is for your chance to review the FAFSA for accuracy and completeness. So at this point, they will provide this to you. You'll notice what I have listed there is some students are picked for a review called verification. This is the federal government just making sure that what you put on the FAFSA is complete and accurate. That is our requirement that we have to complete for them. So you'll receive this student aid report with the information, but then you'll also receive information from the schools talking about what additional documentation we might need. So once you receive this information, this is kind of your heads up. And then you'll also receive some letters from us, as well as other institutions that say, hey, we need to verify who's in the household. We need to verify your taxes. And this is where, if you do that IRS data retrieval tool, it becomes a lot easier for us, because then at that point, it's just one form. You fill out the form and we have everything we need. So just keep in mind, this may be a possibility. They say it is random, but I guarantee if you're picked one time, you'll probably be picked every year that you're in school. It just seems to work out that way. So just keep in mind that that could be a possibility. Only about 30% of the population is chosen, but that's a good chunk of the population usually. So just keep in mind that that could come. Now, we talked about using your 2018 taxes, and that may make some of you nervous, especially right now, because we have unfortunately, a lot of students and parents dealing with job losses or medical expenses, or anything that may be coming with this pandemic for your family. So keep in mind, special circumstances is always an option. Basically, what this allows is if you complete the FAFSA, you have to complete it on your 2018 taxes. Now, some of you are saying, well, my 2019 taxes are very different than what my current situation is. And we completely understand that. And that's what this allows us to do, a professional judgment. So a lot of schools will have an additional document that you need to complete just explaining the situation. And then you would provide documentation. So if it's job loss, you would provide that information. Or if it's medical expenses, you could provide that information. Whatever it may be, you would provide the documentation that goes along with the form. And then that would allow us to make updates to your FAFSA to show an actual picture of what's happening with your family right now. So just keep this in the back of your mind. I hope it never happens to you. I hope you never have to use it. But just keep it in the back of your mind that this is an option. So if some things do need updated or corrected to be a clearer and more accurate picture of your family right now, then this is an option. Just keep that in mind. I mentioned this briefly. This is for West Virginia kids. So keep in mind, this is additional information. It's called CFWV. It's called College Foundation of West Virginia. It's fantastic. There's a ton of information out there about financial aid. There's even information out there like ACT, SAT prep. There's all kinds of information out there, but they are doing a ton of virtual events right now. So walking you through the FAFSA or helping you fill out the Promise Scholarship or whatever it may be. They have a lot of virtual events. They have a whole schedule out there. So feel free to stop there and check it out to see if they can help you with anything. Deadlines are extremely important with financial aid. You want to make sure that you're meeting all of those deadlines that you may have. Institutions have some deadlines. West Liberty does not. We're on a rolling admission, so we're kind of on a rolling financial aid. We'll process that financial aid whenever you complete it, but keep in mind some aid does run out soon and quickly. So you want to do that FAFSA nice and early to make sure that you're eligible for the most amount of financial aid. West Virginia students, any Promise, you want to make sure that you have the FAFSA and the Promise done by March 1st. And then higher education grant is the FAFSA done by April 15th. So if you're meeting that Promise deadline, then you have nothing to be concerned about with the West Virginia higher education grant. Any PA students that would be eligible for the PA state grant, that must be done by May 1st. So just keep that in mind. Award letters. So you've done all the FAFSA, you've provided all the documentation to the financial aid office that you should need to. What's next? So you'll receive an award letter from the different offices that you're eligible for. And you'll see basically what this is a notification from the different institutions outlining your financial aid available to you. So we'll dig into award letter a little bit more, just so you can kind of understand it. The FAFSA must be received and all the documentation is required before we can send an award letter, as well as be accepted to the institution. So just keep in mind that all those pieces must line up. So if you've done your FAFSA and you're like, I'm not hearing anything from different institutions, I'd reach out, make sure that you're not missing any documentation, make sure that they have everything they need on the admission side. Just make sure all those pieces are matching up for you. So basically, when you get that award letter, what do you kind of need to expect? So these are the 4 main areas that you can look for on an award letter. So let's dig into each one a little bit. So a cost of attendance is just what it sounds like. It's a budget. It's the average amount that it's going to cost a student to attend a university. Keep in mind, every institution is going to be different. It's going to vary even by students. So whether you're living on campus, off campus, or you're in-state or out-of-state or a metro rate student, every cost of attendance is going to be different. And finally, keep in mind that this is just an average. This is not what we're going to charge you, for instance, at West Liberty. We can even include books and supplies in our budget, travel expenses if you're a commuter, personal expenses, those types of things. The only thing that you're going to be charged by an institution is the direct tuition and fees, and if you're living on campus, room and board. But the cost of attendance can include everything to help cover those costs. So that's where we say, like, you can take above and beyond what it actually costs at West Liberty or whatever institution to help cover books and supplies or whatever it may be. So just keep in mind, when you see that cost of attendance number, it's going to be pretty good, slightly higher than what it actually costs. So don't panic. Just keep in mind, we can help fund up to that number. So I talked briefly about this already. So just keep in mind, we will only charge tuition fees and room and board, and then we can help fund those other miscellaneous expenses. And then finally, some people do have additional costs that they're going to have. For instance, if it's an adult student, they're going to have dependent care costs that they need help covered. For instance, our dental hygiene students have to take license credentials and tests and so forth. So we can help cover those one time. Excuse me. So just keep in mind every cost is going to be student dependent as well as institution dependent and all kinds of things. So you can't compare it apples to apples across the board, but it is something that I want you to be aware of as well. The next thing you'll see on there is your expected family contribution. So this is what we get from the FAFSA. So when you complete the FAFSA, we get a number at the end and it's called your expected family contribution. That's what the federal government is saying that you should be able to provide for your students' education. Now, we know a lot of times it's a lot higher than you anticipate, and we can help fund it in different ways, but just keep in mind that that is what we receive at the end of the FAFSA, and that goes into consideration when we're figuring out what you're eligible for award letters. So as you can see here, we take that cost of attendance, we subtract that expected family contribution, and that tells us what your student's financial need is, what you're eligible for financial aid wise. So here's just a breakdown of some scholarship, or I'm sorry, some financial aid that we talked about at the beginning. We'll kind of dig a little bit into it a little bit more. So grants and scholarships, this is the free money. If you were offered a grant or a scholarship, this is exciting. You do not have to repay this. Keep in mind there are multiple factors that go into this. Some of them are financial need. That's the Pell Grant and the West Virginia Higher Education Grant. Some are merit. So you hear about the Promise Scholarship or private scholarships. And then some are even just unique characteristics. So if you are arts and comm, you may have graphic design scholarship. So there's multiple opportunities for scholarships. They're all over the place. Let's dig into scholarships for a minute. Institutions, they can be housed in different locations. So for instance, at West Liberty, financial aid handles the scholarships. Some institutions, admissions may handle the scholarships. So you want to make sure when you're visiting different institutions that you know where the scholarships are being held, because that's where you're wanting to have your conversation. Academic departments may have additional scholarships available that they can award. Athletic scholarships, we hear about those all the time. The biggest one, some of our biggest ones are local churches and local businesses that offer scholarships towards our local students to go to school. State agencies, parents, employers, believe it or not. It doesn't hurt to ask your HR office if there's anything available for your student, even if it covers books, it's something. Guidance counselors should be receiving a lot of scholarship opportunities for your students now. A lot of our local schools put those online, so just make sure that you're checking those often. And because you don't want to miss any deadlines. A lot of those deadlines are early, like December, January, for those private scholarships within your high school. So you want to make sure that you're meeting those deadlines early. And then finally, there's two quick internet sites that I trust, because going to Google and typing in scholarships will send you down a rabbit hole that you don't want to go down. Next is loans. So loans is, believe it or not, considered financial aid. A lot of people don't understand that or don't believe that, but it is. It's actually considered self-help, but it is money that you're borrowing to pay for college. So either the student and or the parent can borrow money to pay for college. Repayment begins after education is complete, or you stop out. So you have a 6-month grace period and then you have to start repayment. But just think of it as an investment into your future. If you're going to go into any debt, student loan debt, and receiving a degree and being able to better is definitely an investment into yourself. So there's several types of loans. There's the federal loan, which that's the FAFSA. When you complete the FAFSA, there's student and parent. The student are limited on how much you can receive every year. So that's where the parent can come in and kind of fill in the gap. There are some institutions offer loans. West Liberty does not, but it might be a question that you might want to ask. Do you offer any additional loan funding? Because it may be a pretty low interest rate. And then keep in mind, there are private and alternative student loans. You just want to make sure that they're student loans, not personal loans. Personal loans, you would require repayment immediately. So you would take the loan and start repaying on it immediately. Well, the whole point of taking the loan is because you can't pay on it immediately. So just make sure when you're applying for private or alternative loans that you're applying for student loans. Those are listed on institutional websites all over the place. So if you're curious about those, you can kind of dig through institution financial aid homepages. So work study, we talked about this briefly, but this is money that you can earn while you're in school. to help pay towards your degree, or a lot of schools use it as pocket money. So it might be something that you can just use as pocket money because you can't work, you go back and forth to work at home and so forth. Undergraduate and graduate students are eligible for this, so keep that in mind as you work through your degrees. On and off campus employment is also available. So every institution is different. You'll want to make sure that you're asking what you need to do to be eligible for work study opportunities on the campuses that you're visiting, because you may need to apply early, or you may need to have financial need, or there may be no off-campus employment. So you just need to make sure you're asking those questions early. There are a lot of additional applications when it usually comes to work study. For instance, you have to apply for certain jobs, or you apply one basic application and they kind of give you a job. Every institution, like I said, is different with this. So you want to make sure you're getting out ahead of it nice and early. So questions once you receive your award letter. So we talked a lot about your award letter, what you might see on it, different funds that you might see. So what are some questions that you might ask when you receive that award letter? The first and foremost is the net price. So we talked very briefly about that. Basically, what is it going to cost you to attend that institution? What are the direct costs minus the financial aid? What is it actually going to cost you? Are the scholarships and grants for 1 year, or are they for 4? So there are some schools that will offer you a freshman scholarship and then that's it, you never get it again. So you want to just make sure that you're asking, are they 1 year or are they renewable? Does it meet your full need? If you're having a hard time seeing, call the school that you received it from and say, what am I going to owe out of pocket? And can they estimate your debt at graduation? That's a big deal. The package that you're providing you, are you going to walk away with a lot more debt than if you go somewhere else, including parent debt? So some institutions include parent loans on their award letters. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that. And then where can you find those additional scholarships and grants? For instance, at West Liberty, we have an outside scholarship page on our website that you can click through and see if you're eligible for any of those. So there's a lot of different opportunities for additional scholarships and grants. And when you're talking to the different institutions, you want to make sure you're answering or asking that question. So if you're interested in a school, how can you find out what it's going to cost you before you jump through the FAFSA and provide the additional documentation and get accepted? So you visited a school and you're like, I want to know what it's going to cost me right now. Can I even afford it? If I really liked it, but I want to make sure I can afford it. This is what's called a net price calculator. Every institution is required to have a net price calculator on their website. So they're all over the website. Some are under admission, some are under financial aid, some are just from the main page. You might have to dig a little bit looking for it, but basically it'll give you an estimated bottom line of what it's going to cost you. They will include academic scholarships, they'll include state scholarships, they'll include federal information. It will give you a bottom line though of what you're looking at certain institutions for that year, for 4 years, whatever it may be. They usually take about 10 minutes to complete, so keep in mind you might need a little bit of time to kind of dig through them, but they are available on every institution's website that receives federal aid. So this is available to you. But just keep in mind this is available now, and then it is probably based off of current cost. So if costs go up every year at an institution, you need to be prepared for that as well. Finally, I did mention that they probably provided some contact information, so you can feel free to reach out to us if you have additional questions. Whether it's the FAFSA or financial aid, or once you get your award letter, whatever you may need from us, feel free to reach out to us. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. I wish I could have been in person with you guys. I'd much rather be doing this in person. So I'm sorry that we can't though. But again, I hope everyone is safe and healthy, and I hope we can get you guys ready for college next year in hopefully a little bit more normal fashion. But other than that, I hope you have a great day.